everybody, it's Mike here from The Art of Guitar. I've got another concert review for you, and after this I have 2 more coming out. Just the shows keep coming to town, and I get so excited to see them, and I love talking about them as well, obviously. So I saw that Testament was coming here with KREATOR, and I thought, man, I have to see Testament again. Last time I saw them, it was the loudest concert I ever saw. It was at First Avenue, and I talk about this all the time, but I remember going upstairs to use the bathroom, and I felt the walls shaking. Like, it was so intense. So I thought, okay, I got to see Testament again because I know Alex Skolnick is with them still. And I've never seen KREATOR before, so I thought that'd be interesting too. The tour's called Clash of the Titans, which is kind of funny because way back in like 91, I went to a concert that was called the Clash of the Titans with a C. This is Clash with a K. But that was Megadeth with Alice in Chains, Slayer, and Anthrax. That was a crazy outdoor show. And it was one of those early formative concerts for me. You know, I'd say the first 5 concerts a kid goes to makes a big impact on them. And I was a huge Testament fan when I was a kid. I remember getting Practice What You Preach only because I saw the video for the ballad. I think it was on Headbangers Ball, and I thought it was so killer. So when I bought the cassette, I really loved the cover. I think it's one of the coolest album covers of all time. I still do to this day. And I was obsessed with trying to learn how to play the ballad. Of course, you can't stop there. I went right out and got the New Order as well. And I actually ended up getting both the tab books for those albums too. And they were pretty good. You know how I am with tab books, you know. But these ones were pretty decent for the most part. And I gleaned a lot of cool techniques from them. It was weird though. One of the songs said that you had to tune up a half a step. I thought that was strange. My friend Al, who ended up being the singer of my teenage metal band, would come over and we would jam out to Testament as well. And Testament became one of our band's biggest influences. A lot of people listen to our old stuff and say we sound like Metallica or Megadeth, but I would say Testament is actually our biggest influence. Well, I'd say Metallica, then Testament's a very close second. And then Spinal Tap. And speaking of Al, he's the guy I actually took to the show because I always like to have a friend there with me. You know, it's really fun. It's like double the fun when you go with somebody and you could share the experiences and really, you know, experience the whole concert together and talk about it later. So I thought it was really cool. Usually I go with my friend Chris, but Al was the one who wanted to go to this one. And I thought, man, it's perfect because he and I love Testament so much growing up. So we get there. It's at a place called Myth Live. It used to just be called Myth. And it's in Maplewood, Minnesota, which is really strange because it's a suburb. And I thought how strange that is to say, yeah, I'm going to see Testament. I got to drive way out to the suburbs, though, to see him. We got there, and there was a pretty long line coming out the front door. And that's one thing I remember about Myth. There's always a big line that you have to wait in. But it went pretty quick. The sun was beating down on us. And there was a couple people that knew the channel. So I was able to talk to a couple people. And the one guy was wearing a Possessed shirt. And I thought, oh, that's a cool looking shirt. You know, he's like, yeah, man, I'm so excited. And I was confused because I didn't know Possessed was opening the show. It wasn't on our ticket. So I'm just like, okay, this guy really loves Possessed. He keeps talking about him. Cool, you know? And then as soon as we walk through the door, I see the huge Possessed backdrop lining the back of the stage. And it was really great looking backdrop. They also had those side baffles, which I think are really important for a lot of bands. They look great. They make the stage look a little more professional. And what's really cool is it can actually have a little bit of a utility effect as well. So you could cover your amp with it if you want to, but what I see it being used for the most is a musician who might have a couple seconds of a break. They'll go behind the baffle and, you know, take a sip of something or a toke or a sniff. I'm not judging here. So it's kind of like a little mini backstage for some people, you know. Anyway, speaking of sipping on things, we walk in and right away to your right is this really fancy looking bar. Actually, the whole venue looks very fancy, like something you'd see in Sex and the City or something, except with metal bands playing off to the side. So we go up and Al offers to buy me a drink because I bought him the ticket. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just have my usual double Jack on the rocks. And the lady's like, all right. And she poured it all the way to the top of this cup. And she set it down so hard that it fell over and spilled all over me. And Al, being really quick-witted, he's like, now it's a double Jack on the mic. And I just busted out laughing, even though I was soaked. And the bartender lady felt really bad. She was cleaning it up, and she poured me another one, so it's all cool. I was afraid, though, if I got pulled over at the end of the night, that I would smell like Jack Daniels on my clothes. That was my only concern, but it didn't happen. We walked through the sea of metal t-shirts, and like I say in almost every video where I go to a metal show, it always feels like a family type vibe. And even if we don't know somebody, you know, you still feel connected because you like the same kind of music. I also like to see the younger generation walking around wearing metal shirts because it kind of gives me hope for the future. Sometimes you feel like metal's just going to disappear someday, but as far as I can see, it's still got some life left in it. We just have to get through all this crazy AI stuff, and I I think we'll be okay. Sometimes you go to these local, smaller metal shows, and it could get so packed that it's uncomfortable. Luckily, when we got there, it wasn't too dense yet. There was still space for us to stand. And we found a really great place kind of on the floor, but back and to the right. And you could see the entire stage, and it had like a nice open feel. I didn't feel like I was being crushed like when we saw Pantera at First Avenue recently. Now that's good for me, but it's bad for the bands. It means the place isn't sold out. But people were still coming through the door, and the opening band, Possessed, was about to go on. I kept admiring their stage setup though, because of their backdrop. Just the font they used reminded me a lot of the old Castlevania on Nintendo, that font and that look. So there was pentagrams, upside down crosses, but it was all red, black, and white, which as you can tell are my favorite colors. And it looked really slick. I love their stage setup. And then they come out, and I didn't know this because I don't know Possessed very well. I never really got into them back in the day. The singer is in a wheelchair. And so they start rocking out. The drummer's doing all these thrash beats. The band is just tight. And the singer is singing on a wheelchair. And I haven't seen that for a lot of years. Way back when my teenage metal band was around, we had a band open for us called Metal Fatigue. And the singer came out on a wheelchair. That's the only other time I've seen that, but it's pretty badass. Possessed is a 5-piece band. So you had 2 guitar players, both who played lead guitar, a bassist, a drummer, and then that singer. And man, they just blew us away. It really brought me back to the old Metal Massacre days. We used to play, I keep talking about my old teenage metal band, but it felt like we were back at First Avenue, just a very clean version of First Avenue. And just seeing how the people were reacting to the death metal, going up to the front of the stage and pumping their fists, and it just felt like I was back in the early 90s again. Something that stood out to me was the drummer was using rototoms on his kit. So usually the drummer has, a set of toms going across the front, but all the way to his left, he had 3 rototoms, kind of the, Neil Peart kind of thing. So it had a lot of punch. Whenever he hit those, you could hear them way louder than the other toms. But it was cool because it differentiated his drumming from a lot of metal drummers. And this dude was tight with double bass. A lot of their beats were thrash beats and double bass beats, a few blast beats thrown in, and I loved it. That's what really brought me back to the old places because it just felt so intense like it used to. Now, I already admitted that I was never a huge Possessed fan. They just never crossed my path. Sometimes a band just has to make its way into your life a certain way. That never really happened with Possessed. And to tell you the truth, I was never a huge death metal type guy. I got into a few bands, but I was never really fully into it like I was with old school thrash metal and groove metal. The vocalist sounded a lot to me like Lemmy, so you can't go wrong with that. It was real tough sounding vocals. And the guitars, man, I swear I was watching the guitars on stage left, and the way he was playing was so fluid. It was almost like the impossible licks he was playing were nothing to him to play. Like he could have just played it with one hand or something. He made everything look really easy. And then the other guitarist who was on stage right, so if you're standing on the stage on the right side, he was just as technical, but he was a little bit more into getting the crowd into it. So he did a lot of fist pumping and a lot of, getting the crowd to react to his playing, which I thought was really cool. Now, we ended up seeing a lot of strange things this night, but the first weird thing that I really saw was 2 guys in the pit wearing masks. Now, the first one was wearing more of a horror mask from a horror movie, and he wore a big jacket. In the back, it said something like by Satan, I think. So that guy, I was like, stay away from that dude if you're in the pit. I'm just warning you right now. The other guy was wearing a cloth pandemic mask in the pit, which I thought was really kind of stupid. But it's like, I'm going to run in a big circle and crash into all these people, but don't breathe on me. So after Possessed got done, by the way, they did a really great job being the first of 3 bands. That can be kind of tough because people are still coming in, and it's really hard to win the whole crowd over when you're the first band. And usually you get less volume and less stage, lights and all that kind of stuff. So they did a great job. They got off the stage. The crowd really loved them. They gave them a really warm, applause at the end and everything like that. And as they got off the stage, this gigantic bar came up in front of the stage, and they were starting to loop this cloth over the top, and I knew it was going to be KREATOR's backdrop or front drop, which happened to be the case. So it goes up and it's this gigantic KREATOR logo. It looked really, really badass. And so this is a great thing to have because it serves 2 purposes. It covers up the stage while they're doing all the work back there so they could set up, and then they could pull it down in dramatic fashion, like how Kiss does it. I think Aerosmith I saw in a video once, and then one time I saw 9 Inch Nails, and Trent Reznor actually had the curtain up for the entire first tune. I thought it was like a mistake, like they couldn't get it to come down like a Spinal Tap moment, but it was during Terrible Lie, which is really cool. And then as soon as the song got done, they pulled it down. I think it was Terrible Lie. So we're having fun hanging out with the metal crowd, getting ready to watch KREATOR. And I have to admit, I never really got into Creator either. I was kind of a poser at this concert, except for with Testament. Nothing could prepare me for what we were about to experience. You could see the light flashing through the front curtain, and as soon as the music started up and the curtain came down, I swear all of our jaws hit the floor. I mean, you can see for yourself. I mean, this is just a video. Can you imagine being there and feeling the intensity of the music while you see this? So the smoke is blowing up behind them. These huge stone-looking demons are on the stage suddenly. And it went from being this suburban small venue concert to feeling like I was in a huge stadium watching the most epic show. I couldn't stop staring at these statues. I kept thinking, how did they do this? I mean, even if it was made out of the same material as like the statue was for And Justice for All tour for Metallica, I thought they would have to have like a separate semi-truck just to carry all the sections of these statues. So either way, I was just blown away. I was like, man, kudos for going through all that expense to bring these killer looking statues with you. And nobody in my group could believe what we were seeing. It was just like we were all in this weird awe state. And this can happen at a concert sometimes. The first band gets done, the crowd was, pretty lukewarm. The second band comes on, and all of a sudden it feels like you're in a whole nother place. The whole floor seemed like it just filled in, and now there's this huge pit going on. So it really felt like we just switched to a whole nother reality suddenly. And even though the pit was really intense, we still have that Minnesota nice pit thing happening here most of the time, where if somebody trips and falls or anything happens, everybody comes together and picks the person up, and then they keep spinning in the circle. I did see one guy, though, come out of the pit, and he was messed up. He was holding his head, and I went up, I'm like, you okay, man? And it turns out that somebody like elbowed him in the side of the head. I wonder if it was that guy wearing the horror mask. Probably was. When I went to buy a Testament shirt, I made sure to pick up a Creator shirt as well. Check it out. Okay, pretty badass, huh? I think this statue is one of the statues on stage, actually. So that's how much of an impact this band had on me. And I kept thinking, just seeing the spectacle and hearing the intensity, I'm like, how the hell is Testament gonna outdo this? I know it's not a competition really, but being in a metal band my whole life, there's always a part of you that wants to blow the crowd away. And if the crowd's already being, blown away, it's really hard to come back and win them back. But I thought, man, they have the history, they have, the power, they have the songs to pull it off, if anybody does. It killed me how the singer, between songs, he would talk to the crowd, but he would do it in a really high-pitched voice. The other guy that did that was the guy from Ghost, but I think he was trying to sound like a vampire or something. But this guy kept it really high. And it reminded me a lot of early Vince Neil whenever he would talk to the crowd. It had that same sort of vibe. When Creator finished their last tune, it felt like the end of the concert. I mean, that's how much energy we all put out, and them too. And it was kind of crazy because I realized that everybody I was with, our little group, we were all Creator fans all of a sudden. I even put up a post jokingly saying, I guess I'm satanic now. Of course they're going to be that great. They've actually been around as long as Metallica has. So a lot of these metal bands that I've been seeing lately, they've been around the block, 40, 50 years. Is a long time to figure out what works, and Creator has figured it out. And speaking of satanic, the imagery throughout this entire night was almost over the top. Everyone from Possessed all the way through to Testament were using this imagery, satanic imagery, pentagrams, upside down crosses, demon faces, and all that kind of stuff. And the funny part of that is that two of my friends that I was with are real, church-going, straight-edge Christians. And my friend goes, yeah, I'm actually at this concert, but I'm not of this concert. I thought that was pretty clever. And I think it looks cool, but I have to admit, sometimes it feels a little bit tired. Like, ever since I was a kid, from Motley Crue, to Slayer and all that kind of stuff, it just seems like How long is the pentagram going to be used in metal? You know what I mean? Maybe it's just a staple. It has to be there. But after a while, it does get a little bit old. You know, how many iterations of it can they do? So I made sure that I paid attention to how they were going to take down these crazy looking statues. And I have to admit, I was both shocked and a little disappointed to learn that they were just inflatable statues. So they let the air out. And the craziest part is I was able to capture one of the demons being deflated, and it looks terrifying. It looks like the end of almost every cheesy 80s horror movie, doesn't it? So that's pretty brilliant that they have inflatable statues that don't look like they're inflatable. I thought, man, that's got to save on the cost for sure. Then I asked, where the hell do you get these things? Because I want a couple for my place. I did not know this until I got to the show, but somebody said that Testament was going to play their first 2 albums in their entirety. And at first I was pretty excited because I thought, man, I love the Legacy and I really love the New Order. But my favorite album is actually Practice What You Preach, and I love Souls of Black. So part of me was a little bit disappointed because I thought, even though that's really cool that they're going to pay homage to their true fans from the old days or whatever, they're, hardcore fans. My friend Al, even though he loves Testament, isn't the biggest Testament fan in the world. He knows, their bigger songs and a couple of their B-sides and all that stuff. But my other friends, I don't know how big a Testament fans they were, and I wanted them to be blown away by Testament like I was when I saw them at First Avenue. So I was hoping they'd play Practice What You Preach, Souls of Black, even, the stuff from The Ritual and Low. So I was kind of disappointed to think that they weren't going to be able to hear those songs live. And selfishly, I wanted to hear a lot of the tunes from Practice What You Preach, but, I thought this might be an interesting thing to witness as well. So Testament kind of did the same thing. They had the bar come down and they lifted up their sign, which was a white demonic sign. Looked really cool, fit in with the night's theme. Then the lights finally go down and they start to play the intro to Eerie Inhabitants. So I thought, oh, sweet. I guess they're going to play the New Order all the way through and then Practice What You Preach all the way through. Maybe whoever told me the news meant their second and third albums in their entirety, not their first 2. And I got so excited, I actually posted on my social media, Testament's going to play the New Order and Practice What You Preach in their entirety. Testament sounded huge, compared to KREATOR, it was pretty, similar in volume and fullness. They were both just kicking major ass. And then when they kicked into the next tune, the New Order, I thought, okay, yes, they're sticking to the script. They're going to play all of New Order, then all of Practice What You Preach. But then for the third song, they kicked into Apocalyptic City. And I'm like, oh no. So I took down my post right away. But even then, I wasn't super down about it. I just thought, I was hoping to hear some Practice What You Preach. So they ended up flipping between the first 2 albums. And they didn't play every song from each album. But it was a really cool mix of the 2. The only problem is the people I was with didn't know many of the songs from the Legacy. In fact, I wrote down my dream set list for Testament, and it's 16 songs long, and that's how many songs they ended up playing that night. So real quick, it would have been Eerie Inhabitants, The New Order, Disciples of the Watch, Trial by Fire, Over the Wall, Into the Pit, Musical Death, Practice What You Preach, The Ballad, Nightmare Coming Back at You, Souls of Black, The Legacy, Electric Crown, Return to Serenity, Low, and Brotherhood of the Snake. I think that would have been killer. It almost would have been like a greatest hits type concert. But I think that really would have worked well for the group of people that I was with, at least. My friend and I decided to just take our chances and go through the pit, even though Jason Mann was there, trying to terrorize everybody. There's always one of those guys in every pit, it seems like. So we get to the front, and it was great because I got to stand next to the platform where Eric and Alex would do their dueling guitar parts. And I have to say that Eric Peterson doesn't seem to get the credit he deserves for being one of the most badass riffers and metal composers of all time. Alex gets a lot of credit for being the shredder, the musical shredder that he is, and he deserves it. I'm actually going to do a video on him pretty soon. But you can't overlook Eric Peterson and his contributions to the metal world all these years. So Testament was killing it. The only problem is what I thought would happen happened. The energy of the room went down a notch. I just don't think people can sustain that kind of energy for 2 bands in a row like that. So KREATOR pretty much wiped everybody out, and then Testament came out and did an admirable job of being the badasses they are. It just wasn't at that First Avenue level that I remember, and back then it was Death Angel and Anthrax that opened for them. And even they didn't do what KREATOR did. Anthrax is one of my favorite bands, but Anthrax has an intensity, but they also back off a little bit. They kind of have some fun. So it left a lot of room for Testament to come out and be the beasts they are. But with Creator, there just wasn't any headroom left, I think. So they played their last tune and they threw picks out to the crowd. And I've been pretty lucky lately. I got one from Metallica not too long ago. So I was feeling it this night. I reached up and the pick hit my hand and like flew across. I couldn't find it. So I was pretty bummed out. Luckily, I met somebody at the show named Errol, who I never spoke to before, I don't think, but it seemed like I knew him for some reason. And I told him that I just missed the pick, and he looks down, he goes, "Oh, it's right there." And he bends over and gets it to me. I'm like, "Thank you, dude." So I was able to get a pick from Testament, which is pretty freaking badass. I look around and notice that my friend Al, who I took to the show, wasn't there. So I checked my phone, and it said, "Hey, Mike, I'm actually out by your truck right now. I kind of left early." And it's kind of funny because he doesn't get out very much. And when he went to buy a beer, he didn't know that I went up and already bought him one. So when he came back to the group, I handed him the beer and he had two. So I think he may have had a little too much that night, just kind of unexpectedly. And so he wasn't feeling the best. He wasn't really getting into the show. Like I said, he's kind of more of a Surface Testament fan. So he left early, which I thought was kind of funny. So I go out there and meet with him and everything worked out. We ended up discussing the show all the way back and we ended up going out to eat and he felt way better after that. But what's funny is we went to Perkins and it was late at night and we're sitting there and this big group of, it looked like teenagers came in and they were all wearing band shirts. So they sit down and I realized that Al and I are being the loud, annoying people at Perkins at night. Usually it's other people annoying me, but this time we were those people. And I could tell by the way the teenagers were looking at us, like, "God, shut up, you guys." And so I asked them, I'm like, "Hey, you guys just go to a concert or something?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, we just went to Godsmack." I totally forgot that Godsmack and Chevelle had a concert that same night at some big stadium. But I was so glad that I ended up going to see, Testament, Possessed, and Creator because it made such an impact on me. I'll never forget that concert for as long as I live. Going to see Godsmack and Chevelle would have been cool too, but lately I've just been feeling a lot more metal. I love going way back to my early days when I got into music versus my later days when Godsmack came out because those were just depressing days. Anyway, I feel like I should put my Testament shirt back on to end this video. Hang on. Okay, I really love the Testament logo. I used to draw it on my folders at school all the time. Keep an eye out for my Alex Skolnick Techniques video, which should be out in the next few months. I'm excited about that video because I use so many of his techniques, even to this day, that it'll be really fun to show them to all of you. Okay, everyone, catch you at the next video. Like I said, I have 2 more reviews coming out. One's going to be for Iron Maiden, and then the next one's going to be a secret, but it's going to be a good one. All right, we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.